The dim glow of the club's flickering neon sign barely cut through the haze of smoke that hung in the air. I stood backstage, adjusting my worn top hat and smoothing out the creases in my cape. Another night awaited me at Victor's rundown nightclub, a sparse crowd of indifferent faces more interested in their drinks than any performance. Victor himself leaned against the bar, his weary eyes reflecting the weight of keeping this place afloat. Stepping into the dim spotlight, I felt the familiar creak of the stage beneath my feet. My opening illusions elicited polite nods, but little more. As I prepared for the next trick, a loud voice sliced through the murmur of the audience. "Is that the best you've got?" A man slouched at a corner table. Charlie, a notorious heckler whose bravado increased with each drink. His challenge hung in the air, and all eyes turned toward us. I offered him a calm smile. "Perhaps you'd like to join me and add a touch of your own magic." The crowd chuckled as he stumbled up to the stage, puffing out his chest. Handing him a deck of cards, I began a simple trick. With a snap of my fingers, the cards transformed into a small potted plant right in his hands. Charlie blinked in confusion, and before he, or anyone else, could react, he vanished, leaving only the plant behind. A hush fell over the room, a mix of awe and unease. Breaking the silence, I turned my gaze to a young couple seated near the front. Their clothes were worn, and shadows of worry etched their faces. "For you," I said gently, producing an old coin from behind the lady's ear. A token of fortune. They examined it skeptically but slipped it into a pocket. Unbeknownst to them, the coin was a rare treasure worth $30,000. The atmosphere in the club began to warm, curiosity replacing apprehension. Next, I approached a pair of newlyweds who sat hand in hand. "May I share a moment with you?" With a graceful wave, I conjured a delicate ring, an exact replica of one they thought lost forever. Tears glistened as they recognized it, and the room erupted into genuine applause. Laughter and whispered conversations spread, the earlier tension melting away. As the night wound down, I retreated backstage to pack up my modest props. Victor appeared at the doorway, his usual stoic expression softened. "Elliot," he began slowly, "I have a favor to ask." He spoke of his grandson, a boy burdened by anger and isolation, volunteering at the children's hospital yet untouched by its innocence. "Could you perform there? Maybe your magic could reach him where words haven't." I studied Victor's lined face, understanding the depth of his concern. "I'll do it," I replied. "Sometimes a little wonder is all it takes." The hospital's white corridors stretched out like a maze, each turn identical to the last. I carried a bag of tricks at my side, feeling out of place amid the clinical sterility. As I entered the pediatric ward, a dozen small faces turned toward me. Their eyes held a mix of curiosity and weariness that only children who've spent too much time in hospitals possess. I tipped my hat, letting a colorful scarf flutter out, and a few smiles began to appear. A delicate girl with wide, wondering eyes clutched a dog-eared magic book to her chest. "Are you a real wizard?" she asked in a voice barely above a whisper. Kneeling beside her, I produced a tiny paper flower from behind her ear. "Only if you believe in magic," I replied. Her face lit up, and for a moment, the beeping machines and antiseptic smells seemed to fade away. Across the room, however, a boy sat apart from the others, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. I approached him slowly. "Would you like to see a trick?" He glanced up, eyes sharp with defiance. "Magic isn't real," he muttered. "It doesn't change anything." His words hung heavy between us. "Perhaps not," I admitted, "but sometimes it can make us feel a little better, even if just for a moment. He turned away, a wall of silence rising between us. Respecting his space, I moved back to the center of the room. Determined to brighten the atmosphere, I began transforming everyday items into sources of wonder. Syringes became blooming roses with a simple flick of the wrist. 4 bags shimmered with soft colors as I cast light through prisms, painting the walls with rainbows. Laughter bubbled up from the children, a sound so pure it almost startled me. For the girl with the magic book, I crumpled a tissue paper and, with a gentle blow, released a flurry of delicate butterflies that fluttered around her bed. Her laughter was infectious, spreading to nurses and parents alike. As the day drew to a close, I started packing my props, the energy of the room still buzzing. A quiet voice stopped me. "Wait." Turning, I saw the boy standing hesitantly nearby. His tough exterior showed cracks, vulnerability seeping through. "Can you do real magic?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "What kind of magic are you hoping for?" I responded gently. He took a deep breath. "I want to be healed. Can you make me better?" The weight of his request settled heavily on my shoulders. "I wish with all my heart that I could," I said softly. "Some things are beyond even a wizard's power." Disappointment clouded his face. "But maybe," I added, "I can show you something extraordinary tomorrow." He looked at me skeptically but gave a small nod. "All right," he whispered. As I left the ward, the echoes of their laughter lingered, but so did the stark reminder of the limits of my abilities. Returning to the hospital the next evening, I carried with me more than just my bag of tricks. I had a plan, a way to bring a bit of the cosmos to those who needed it most. With the help of some sympathetic nurses, I arranged the children's beds to face the center of the ward. As dusk settled outside, we dimmed the lights, and the sterile room began to soften. I stood in the middle of the circle, taking a deep breath. "Tonight," I announced, "we journey to the stars." With a subtle movement, I released tiny specks of luminescent dust into the air. They caught the faint light, twinkling like distant galaxies. Gasps echoed around me as the particles seemed to suspend, hovering above each child. The walls faded away, replaced by a canopy of shimmering constellations. The children reached out, their fingers brushing against the illusion of infinity. Even the boy who had challenged me watched with wide eyes, his skepticism melting in the face of wonder. I approached him slowly. "Do you see them?" I asked. He nodded silently. My mentor, Magnus, once told me that magic is not about tricks, but about opening hearts, I shared. Sometimes believing is the greatest magic of all. For the grand finale, I cupped my hands together and whispered an old incantation Magnus had taught me. When I opened them, a soft glow emanated, a tiny orb pulsating with warm light. I placed it gently into the boy's hands. "This is a star just for you," I said. He stared at it, tears welling up. "It's not a cure," I continued, "but it's a piece of hope. Hold on to it whenever you feel afraid." Around us, the other children clutched their own bits of stardust, the room filled with a quiet peace. The boy looked up at me, a small smile breaking through. "Thank you," he whispered. In that moment, the lines between reality and magic blurred, not just for him, but for me as well. The weight of his request the day before felt lighter, knowing I'd given him something meaningful. As I prepared to leave, the frail girl with the magic book tugged at my sleeve. "You are a real wizard," she said earnestly. I smiled, touched by her conviction. "Perhaps we all are," I replied, in our own ways. Victor met me at the doorway, his eyes misty. "You've done more than I could have hoped," he said softly. I nodded, understanding that no words were needed beyond that. Walking away from the hospital, I felt a quiet contentment. Back at the club, I sat alone on the empty stage, the echoes of applause long gone. I thought of Magnus and his belief in the power of wonder. Whether what I did was real magic didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the spark I'd seen in their eyes, a reminder that even in the darkest places, a little light can make a world of difference.